Hello and welcome. Appreciate everybody taking time today on a Thursday, end of January. We are very pleased to be able to present another one of our AI workshops. We've seen these be wildly popular throughout 2024. We plan on continuing these in 2025. And specific to this presentation, we are going to show everybody how we can create a quick custom AI chatbot specifically for your company. And it's really a way to get a quick win, showing AI progress for your team. This is something that I know sales teams really like, marketing teams, ways for clients to get quick information. And so we're going to take you through here how we do that, how we go about it, the architecture behind it, and really dive deep and then show you the chatbot we have built for our company and how we go about this. So my name, once again, is Steve Taplin. I am the CEO of Sonatafy Technology. And with me is Dr. Antonio Tamayo, who is our lead AI engineer. And we are going to dive right in. If you're not familiar with Sonatafy Technology, we are a custom software development company. Our niche is that we're a US based company and we employ engineers throughout Latin America. We have over 100 active full time engineers today. All of our engineers are natively on US time zones, fully bilingual and highly English proficient, and are all mid and senior level engineers based on modern cloud and mobile tech stacks. Many companies like to supplement their engineering teams with our engineers or have us act as their entire engineering department. And we are focused on efficiency, quality, and getting things done. Our AI practice is a big part of our company, led by Antonio. And we have been consistently creating different proof of concepts for different industries, from healthcare to finance to all over the board, to build out use cases to show how AI can help your company and how we can help you implement those very quickly. Biggest mistake we see everybody doing with AI is they start too big. AI is a massive elephant. Certainly, it's been all over the news lately with the new model out of China that is shaking things up in the U.S. Took $1 trillion of value off the stock market earlier this week, but that's massive models. For most companies, you got to start small. You got to show quick wins. We see CIOs, CTOs, VP of engineering that need to provide these quick wins for their executive team so that they can see measurable progress. And so that is a key part of what we do and how we go about it. And so this has been a highly anticipated request that we have had to help companies create their own AI chatbot that can be a smart chatbot that can either be used by technical salespeople at the company internally or directly with clients. We often see, depending on the company, there might be a handful of people that have the golden knowledge of everything they do. We see this a lot in manufacturing companies, distribution companies, and we've had this request to figure out a better way for quick answers, both for internal teams, especially when it comes to technical, very highly technical sales, and then also for external teams. And the coolest part about this, and the way we've built this, is we could literally build a first draft of an AI companion without ever even meeting with you. We have built this where we can scrape your website and all the content on your website, and any marketing materials that you use outside of your website, and use that to create the database to custom train a chatbot specifically for you. And now with that, people don't always have, I know with the sonatafy.com website, we have over 1,000 pages. We're big with content marketing. And sometimes companies don't always have all the pages on their website up to date. And so once we do this initial data dump, we scrape the data, then it's a matter of training the model. And we'll talk to you about how we do that. So we have focused on making this quick and easy to get a custom AI chatbot live for your company. And with that, Antonio, I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
Okay, thank you, Steve, and welcome, everyone. We're excited to stay here for this new Sonatafy AI workshop. So today, we're going to talk about a chatbot, a smart chatbot built with the most recent advances in natural language processing and AI approaches. I'm talking about retrieval augmented generation, text embeddings, and generative AI, and so on. So the purpose is to provide a smart chatbot equipped with capabilities to answer any question related with your company and the target audiences, potential customers or internal teams. So today we are going to show you how is behind the scenes um, this chatbot that we developed with the most recent advances in AI. So jump to the next one. So first of all, we need to mention the features that we consider to develop our tool. So we have a chatbot, so we need to talk about message handling, and we're using semantic search. We used a loop, a human loop with reinforcement learning also to retrain our model. The main model that we have behind the scenes is an embedded model that we train with the information that Steve uh, mentioned before. We are using the information that we have in our database and all the documents that we use to train a model. We are using AI response generation with generative AI, and we have a continuous interaction monitoring. All of these features are built together with Pinecone and OpenAI. I will talk about that in detail in a moment, the Pinecone and OpenAI. Just jump to the next one. So the technical specifications that we need to mention before to show our architecture and to go through in detail are we're using Python as a main language, programming language, and we're using Django as a framework. As you know, Django is maybe the best framework that we have to build web applications using Python. And for the front end, we're using JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and we're using Bootstrap for a couple of details on the front. I need to mention that we're using Pandas also because we're dealing with data, and Pandas is used for some data processing in the application. On the other hand, it is important to mention that we are using AWS as a cloud provider. Specifically, we are using EC2 instances and Apache as a web server to deploy the application. And we are using external tools, in this case via API. We are using Pinecone, as I mentioned before, and we are using OpenAI, two models from OpenAI. I'll go through in detail in a moment.
And
And
Antonio, so this is the architecture that we have done for the product, and we largely base it on where we can get cost efficiencies, to making sure to have the right tools to get it done. But if we were building this for somebody else, we have flexibility for a different architecture, right?
correct. That's it. Mhm. And
Excellent.
yeah, we're using also other external tools that is important to mention because I will show you the relevance of scraping scripts to build the initial database that we are using in our application and the strategies that we developed in order to get more accurate answers with the reinforcement learning approach that we're using. So we're using Python and with request and beautiful so for scraping. Scraping is a very important part in this tool. I will show you that in a moment. So talking about the architecture, we need to mention that we have the following components. We have a backend developed in Django. We are using Pinecone as a database management system. I will talk about the Pinecone in a moment. We are using OpenAI via API, and we have developed our front end using the technologies that I mentioned before. So there are the components that we have. We have interactions between all these components, and we are using APIs to get information from external resources. In this case, Pinecone and the models from OpenAI. In this diagram, we see that we have three layers, right? So maybe the most important part is to notice that we have in the top layer, we have the front end components. In the middle layer, we have the back end components, right? And in the other layer, we can see that we have the persistence layer, right? So in the left side, we say that we have a database and an API connection with a word embedding model, right, from OpenAI. And in the right side, we have the GPT-4 OMAN. That's the model that we are using for generate answers, right? So in the middle layer, we have the core of the application. We are using methods written in Python to get the messages that the end user put in the window, in the chat window, and we are doing different things with that messages. First of all, we are using search, semantic search, using the model that we have to translate or to convert the text into vectors, right? And we are using cosine similarity in Pinecone to get the nearest question that we have in our database, and then we can match the most accurate answer to retrieve to the end user. So that's the most important part. But we have um, a reinforcement learning also with the thumbs up and thumbs down icons that you have in the top layer. So an end user can validate or can send a feedback according to the answers that they are getting from the chatbot, right? So in the middle layer, we can get the feedback from the users, and according to that feedback, we can retrain the model, right? Searching for a more accurate answer, or we can add a like, a thumbs up in the answers, and the model is learning all the time, right? And in the middle layer, we can see in the right side that we have the other component, which is the history of the interactions, because it is important for the owner to validate how is the chatbot behavior, right? So we are disposing a CSV file with all the historical interactions of the chatbot, and we can download it whenever we want, right? And in the top layer, we have the rest of the components for the front end of the chatbot. So that's it. That is a window where we can put our messages, and all of these layers are in connection all the time. So let's.
And Antonio, I'm a visual person, so I want to go ahead and pull up our chatbot and show everybody as we're talking about the architecture here, so that they could see it in action. And so this is our Sonatafy.com website, and we have embedded the chatbot as a widget on the bottom of our site. Now, this can be something that you can have seen the clients. It's something you can have seen internal. And I'm just going to zoom in, and I'm going to start asking it questions. And I could be a potential client. And what about case studies? And um, it goes through, and now it's come up with an answer how you can read about recent case studies on our website. And it's actually giving the link right here where the end user can go and see the website itself. And so we've also had this tool that we built in on Rate My Last Answer, which is a big way on how we train the model. So I like this answer. It goes to the case studies, and I'm giving it a thumbs up. and it's thanking me for my feedback. So I'm going to ask it another question and say, what makes the Sonatafy team different? And so the model is coming through here. It's talking about how we go about it, and then it's referencing to our case studies as well. And now I'll ask kind of a different question. What are typical contract terms? And so it's providing an overview of that. And so all these things we've trained, we go through, we have reports available that you can pull at any time that you can look at every question and answer that was given. We actually have some safeguards in case you have a bad actor on your website and they just want to put a thumbs down on all of them to try to screw up your model. We have some safeguards in place on that. But it really, and we affectionately call this the Ask Me Anything chatbot because it's meant to ask me anything. I'm going to say, hey, I am looking for a job. And so now it's basically pointing people to our careers page where they can find more information. We also have this pop-up that comes up at any time. If they want to schedule a meeting with us, that gives a link to be able to schedule a meeting. And so it's very robust. It does take some, although we can get the initial model up quickly, it does take some training. And that's why we have this thumbs up and thumbs down and the ability to pull reports to be able to do it. So thought I'd show a visual here of this as I know it helps to be able to see exactly what you're talking about, what you're referring to, how you're going about it. And so we'll jump back into the presentation now.
Cool. Thank you, Steve. That's impressive. And talking about the database, it is important to mention that we decide to use Pinecone because we are using semantic search. So this is maybe the most important feature of this chatbot, together with the scraping. So Pinecone is a cloud-based database management system, and it is vector oriented. So it is important because if we are trying to use semantic search, we need to transform the text, the questions that we are getting from the chatbot into vectors. And we need a database management system to allocate or to save those vectors and to retrieve the nearest questions, the nearest vector as soon as possible, right? So in Pinecone, we have this feature, and additionally, we have different metrics. So in our case, we are using cosine similarity to compute the distance between vectors and to retrieve the nearest question. And after that, we can match the most accurate answer to retrieve to the end user, right? So here in this slide, we see the schema that we are using. It depends on the needs that you have. It can change, but maybe the most relevant aspect to mention here is the capacity of Pinecone to allocate the word embeddings and to retrieve the most accurate answers quickly, right? And maybe another important aspect of Pinecone is Pinecone has a very generous free tier. For example, in our application, we have almost 10,000 questions and answers, 10,000 rows, and we are using less than 1%, around the 7% of the capacity in the free tier. So that's very, very important to mention. And also, we have 2 million of write units in the free tier per month and 1 million of read units per month in the free tier. So that's a very, very good option to work with word embeddings and semantic search. So that's
to that point, Antonio, when we go back to the architecture that we've done, obviously there's a cost for the AWS EC2 instance, but that's very low because we don't have much data. what other costs should people expect from just a pure tech stack perspective? And you mentioned Pinecone, how the free tier has pretty extensive capabilities. What other costs? I mean, it's pretty minimal. Um, should people expect as part of this type of architecture to build their tool?
Mhm. I think maybe we need to pay for the EC2 instance in AWS. Maybe with the free tier in Pinecone, we can deploy our application, and it depends on the needs, but maybe around $50 for the EC2 instance in AWS to guarantee a very, very well
Right?
functionality.
Like $50 a month. I mean, very
Yeah,
low cost.
yeah, it's cheaper.
Any of the other tools like the OpenAI API and Python and Beautiful Soup, is there a cost for any of those other tools?
Yeah, that's impressive because we have been using OpenAI for more than 2 months, and maybe the cost is less than $2.
So it's from a technology stack perspective for creating this, for getting it off the ground. I mean, and we, from a data perspective on our chatbot, we have over 1,100 website pages of information scraped, plus presentations and marketing materials. So I guess we're on the high end of spectrum, and so just pointing out that the technology costs themselves are extremely low for this, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's really nice. And the rest of the technologies are in the free tier also, so we can use it.
Excellent. Thanks, Antonio.
Great. So talking about the backend and front end interaction, I would like to mention that the backend is in charge of the semantic search. Uh, is in charge of handling of feedback and the retraining of the model, and is in charge of the scraping workflow for new data. I will show you that in detail in a moment. And the front end is in charge uh, of the interaction with the end user to get the messages, and is in charge of sending the feedback to the backend, right? And in the front end, we are using JavaScript for the feedback interaction, and in the backend, we're using Django and the integrations with the OpenAI API and the API of Pinecone, right? So in this diagram, we can see the flow of the data, or the flow of the functionality of the chatbot, but it is simple. I will explain in the next slide. So maybe the most relevant part to show here is the methodology, the approaches that we are using to develop this application. So first of all, I would like to say that the methodology is divided in 2 stages. So the first stage is in charge of the building of the initial database that we need to get the tool app, right? So that first stage consists in 3 components. The first one is the scraping, the second one is the model training, and the third one is the database persistence. What is scraping in the first stage of the methodology? So imagine that you want to deploy a chatbot, a specific chatbot for your company. So all that we need to develop that is the URL, the main URL of your company. If you have a lot of information there, we will use scraping to get questions and answers about your company, right? So that's the scraping. We can use the scraping over a document, presentations, PDFs, whatever you want, and we can build an initial database, right? Questions and answers. After that, we need to train the model. The model here is a word embedding model. So we reuse, or we use the fine tuning technique in order to represent, to transform the questions into vectors, right? Into word embeddings. And we matched all the answers that we get during the scraping stage with the vectors that we developed or we trained during the model training step. And finally, we need to persist all the data that we have, the word embeddings, and the metadata that we want to use into a database management system. So in our case, it's Pinecone. So we need to put all of this. The Pinecone that we are using we are using is a cloud-based um, tool. So we only need to write a script in Python, and we can do it for all the questions and answers that we got for the scraping, and we can put that in a fraction of a second, right? So in this diagram, we can see the methodology that we developed during this stage. So we are a use we have a user with an initiate scraping, and then we can retrieve all the questions and answers. Then we convert all the questions into vectors, and finally we can persist all the information in Pinecone. Right? Go to the next one, please. And the second stage of the methodology, it's very important. This is the methodology during inference, right? When we are interacting with the chatbot, we are using all these steps. So remember, the first stage is to create, to build the initial database. And during the inference, we have those steps, right? So the first one is the identification of the question. How we are doing that? When you put a message in our chatbot, once a new message is received, the tool uses generative AI to extract all the questions that you can put in a simple message. You can put a question, or you can put just a statement, and using generative AI, we can extract all the relevant information to convert that into questions, right? After that, we need to convert those texts into vectors, and we use the cosine similarity using Pinecone, the Pinecone engine, to retrieve the nearest question that we have in our database. So that's semantic search. And using the nearest question, we can match with the answer that we want to retrieve to the end user, right? So that's the first part in the left side of this slide. But you saw that we have a thumbs up and thumbs down icons in the chatbot. So if you send a thumbs up, we get it, and we put that, we update the database with that feedback. But if you send a thumbs down, we need to validate, we need to search for a more accurate answer in all the information that we have available. In our case, our website. So the chatbot is doing that every every day with all the feedback that we're receiving. And obviously, we have some validations, because we need to validate before to update our database. We need to validate if the feedback is malicious or not. But if not, we need to search for a more accurate answer. And it is doing in a fraction of a second, or maybe in a minute, but all the time the database is update, and the answers of the chatbot are good and good, right? So that's important. Go to the next one, please. This is a diagram to show the methodology during the inference. That's the same that I mentioned in the last slide. It's just to show you how we can put all of this in a diagram. Go to the next one, please. Okay, another important feature of our development is the continuous interaction monitoring. Why do we need this? It is important to evaluate the chatbot behavior, because when imagine that we want to know about the responses, about the answers that the chatbot is sending to our end users. So in this case, we have this feature. We are getting all the interactions, all the messages from the end users, and we are saving the timestamp, the question and answer, the number of thumbs up and thumbs down that we have for each question, and we have a field with validation status, right? And we save all of this in a CSV file, and the owner of the application can validate, can download the historical data whenever he or she wants, right? So that's important. And the field, the validation status field is important because we have the capability to tag each answer as a validated. And in this case, if we receive a thumbs down feedback, but the answer is validated, so the system shouldn't do anything, right? Because the answer is validated. So that's the continuous interaction monitoring.
And so, Antonio, in addition to this AI chatbot, one of the things we're stemming off this is the ability to have an autoresponder to RFPs, requests for proposals, and RFQs, requests for quotes. With that said, we do have a question here that I'm going to flash up from Michael Harvey. Michael, thank you for the question. So I want to scrape two public databases and cross-reference the data between. Antonio, what are your thoughts with that? With the methodology that we're talking about here, and if we were to scrape two different public websites and analyze that data, what are your initial thoughts?
Okay, I think it is possible. Maybe the most important aspect to mention here is we need to be careful with the scraping, because right now we are using our own website to scrape, and if you want to develop your your own chatbot, we can scrape your website, right? But we need to be careful with scraping with other sites. But if the information
Uh,
is public,
uh,
we can do it.
that's a valid point. I don't think our legal team has gone into that, as we've been focused on doing it for ourselves and clients with their consent. So that's a good point. We would probably need to look into. But let's say we got permission. What
Uh-huh.
would be your thoughts on how to cross-reference the data?
Yeah, that's completely possible, and we can reuse the methodology that we use to develop our tool to do that. It's completely possible.
Excellent. Michael, thank you for the question. We appreciate it. And if anyone else has questions, feel free to throw them on up here in the chat, and we're happy to pull them up.
Okay, cool. So about the API integration, I mentioned the relevance of Pinecone API, but I have not talked about the OpenAI models that we are using. That's the other component that we are using via API. Remember that we are using semantic search. When we use semantic search, we need word embeddings. So the first model that we are using from OpenAI is the ADA model to convert all the text into word embeddings. And we are using that via API. And the other one is GPT-4. That's very important because we are using GPT not only to generate human-like responses, but also to extract the information that we are getting inside the messages, right? Because remember, we can get just a statement or we can get a particular question, but we need to pre-process that in order to get all the questions inside that, and then we need to search for the corresponding answer for each of the questions, right? So that's the API integration that we are using at this moment. The API with Pinecone and the API with OpenAI models. Right. And about the deployment details, we need to mention that we need, in order to deploy a tool like this, we need to create an AWS account, a private AWS account. We need to configure an EC2 instance. And in our case, we are using Apache, but you can use Nginx or maybe other server, web server application. But that's we need to deploy our tool. setting the AWS EC2, configuring the Apache or the web server application, configuring the domain, the SSL certificate, and clone the repository of the project. In our case, we have all the source code to clone that and to adapt it for a new client, install all the libraries and dependencies, and connect the app with the Pinecone and OpenAI via API. And after that, we need to carry out the testing phase. But it is important to mention that this is the list of steps that we carried out for our application. But if we want to develop a chatbot for a new client, we need to create the initial database with the scraping, and we need to adapt the front end and a couple of details. So we estimate that maybe in 1 week we could deploy a specific chatbot for a new company using our methodology.
Antonio, we have another question. Let me flash it up from Stuart Worrell. Stuart, thank you for the question. So if we were to have 200 agents worldwide continually update each other and each location's in local language, how would we go about this? How would it affect the answers? What are your thoughts here, Antonio?
Yeah,
Great question, Stuart. Thank you.
That's a very interesting question. And I need to say that the capabilities that we have with the most recent technologies in natural language processing are impressive. We can use the models, the GPT model, for example, to deal with different languages at the same time. So maybe you can put a question in Spanish at this moment in our chatbot, and they will retrieve an accurate answer in English, right? And I tested with a couple of languages, and that's really impressive because the large language models that we have behind the scenes are cross-language technologies. That's very, very important
And
question.
so the local language part is taken care of by the advancements with OpenAI and the capabilities there. How about if we were trying to, have 200 websites for scraping and kind of comparing answers? What are your thoughts there?
Mhm. Yeah, we need to test it. We need to test it. I think that that's possible. There are several websites, but maybe we need to consider the delay, right, during the scraping process. But for now, we are using just one website, but it is possible. Maybe we need to consider that feature for a new
Yes. And so maybe from a chatbot perspective, we're talking about a little different thing, but the ability to build a system that's constantly monitoring 200 agents is certainly something that is very possible, and local language wouldn't be a barrier there. And so, and Stuart, I see a follow-up question here. Are you saying it's centralized AI or decentralized?
Mm, maybe for now, I would say centralized.
Excellent. Well, thanks for the questions, everyone. We really appreciate it. We specifically do these workshops where we like to give the technical details behind it. Some companies don't like to talk about the secret sauce on how they do things. We're of the abundance mentality. We like to show how we attack problems, how to go about it. We're constantly seeing business and tech leaders need more and more ways to show they're making progress with AI, to show that their company is taking advantage of these things. And, that's a key part on why we continue to create these tools and do these webinars around it, to give more information and to create more tools that leaders can show progress of their company using AI. And it sounds like a broken record. And many times the people hounding you about why aren't we using AI or what are we doing, they often don't really even know what AI is, because if you ask 10 different tech leaders, you probably get 10 different answers. And our goal has been to make it simple and to focus around quick wins. And, Antonio, any final thoughts you'd like to say here?
No, that's it. Maybe in conclusion, I would like to say that with this methodology, we learned how to integrate the most recent natural language processing and AI uh, advances to achieve the goals that we propose with the chatbot. That's a very good approach. And if you want to develop a custom AI companion, we can help you.
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the webinar. It looks like we've had quite a few people on here. We had over 260 register. We love doing these. Anytime, feel free to reach out to us. You can go to our website and ask our chatbot on how you get a hold of us, and it'll schedule a meeting with us directly. We do offer the ability where we'll build out free proof of concepts from an AI perspective. We also offer free code reviews to help get a third-party perspective on coding practices within the company. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We hope you enjoyed the webinar, and everybody have a great rest of your day and rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.